So yesterday the news came out that Davante Adams had officially been released by the Jets. And so now there's a lot of questions about where Davante Adams could end up. I think the Packers are a place that could make sense for many different reasons, which I broke down yesterday. But in this video, I want to break down or react here to what Adam Schefter had to say. He gives his thoughts on the potential Davante Adams and Packers reunion on the Jen, Gabe, and Chewy show on ESPN Milwaukee earlier today. So let's give this a listen, and then I'll give my thoughts.
Let's talk about Davante Adams, because obviously there is a lot of interest from Packers fans to have Davante Adams reunite with the Green Bay Packers. Are you hearing anything? Are the Packers interested in bringing him back, or should we just kind of move on?
Well, I think there'd be some interest. I don't know that it's option one for him or them. I think it's something that absolutely is out there. Again, it sounds like he'd like to go back to the West Coast. I think Green Bay does make some sense, and Green Bay certainly could use another wide receiver.
All right, I'll stop there. So first thing he says, he thinks there'd be some interest. And I think the hard thing sometimes when listening to these reporters is when to know when they're giving their own opinions and when they're sharing things more related to maybe what they're hearing from their sources. And obviously, you'd assume that probably impacts opinions as well. So he didn't really say there anything specifically about exactly what he's heard necessarily, but at the same time, maybe he thinks there's interest because he's heard from potential sources that there's interest. It's hard to know for sure if he's heard this from anyone he could be connected to in the Packers or maybe other teams out there. Hard to know exactly. Maybe he got that from there. Maybe he didn't. But he says he thinks there'd be some interest, which I assume that when the Packers are looking at their options, I feel like this would at least come up in discussions. If you're Brian Gutekunst and you're reportedly from Dan Graziano in the past week, the Packers are wanting to add a veteran receiver. I think in everyone's mind with Davante, the great time he had here in Green Bay, your natural thought is, man, okay, well, why couldn't he come back to Green Bay? And I even saw some odds earlier today, and he was up there at the top, or the Packers were up there at the top for teams for a team that could for a potential reunion with Davante Adams. And so I think if you're having to pick among the 32 teams or 31 teams, because the Jets are not going to pick Davante back up, if you had to go, Packers or some other random teams, you maybe go with the Packers just because you have that history there. At the same time, maybe Gutekunst, because he already released Davante, doesn't want to bring back Davante older, but it is changed. It is a little different now just because he's older. And because of that, you're going to get him for a cheaper type contract. And so the question becomes, how much does Davante Adams want? What is he looking for? I don't know if Schefter said this yet, but let me play one more part here.
I'm sure they're looking at what they can do here during free agency. Do you see the list of free agent wide receivers in this class?
We certainly have seen it, Adam. We certainly have. We looked at it, and then we looked away.
Hold on. We got Davante Adams, Stephon Diggs, Keenan Allen, Chris Godwin, Amari Cooper, Brandon Cooks, Marquise Brown, Darius Slayton, DeAndre Hopkins, Elijah Moore, Deontay Johnson, De'Ami Brown, Juju, Josh Palmer, Mike Williams, Nick Westbrook-Akine, Van Jefferson, Robert Woods, DeMarcus Robinson, Tyler Boyd, Tutu Atwell, Noah Brown. I mean, it's a pretty deep list.
But it's not a very good list.
Right, and a lot of those guys are coming off of injury as well.
Well, you have that's what it is. There are some injury guys. There are some guys that are younger, some guys that are older, but it's supply and demand.
Yeah, I mean, it's not nobody there other than Davante, I think, can step into a team and be wide receiver one. Do you?
I think he can be. I think he still can be a wide receiver one. He's not the same guy. It's not like we're talking about the prime Davante Adams that we saw tearing it up. He's not that, but he's still a great receiver.
Oh, he's still really good. I think he's the best of the bunch.
No. I think Gabe is saying he thinks he's the only one who could step in and be a wide receiver one. When you look at the rest of that list, they all sort of feel like wide receiver twos or further down on the list. And Green Bay is in desperate need of somebody to come in and be the guy.
Chris Godwin could be, but he's coming off a big knee.
Yeah, there's a huge question mark.
All right, so that's pretty much all I'll share there. But them talking about the free agent options, I do think when you're looking at some of these receiver free agent options, a lot of the guys are older, which is why they're free agents, which is why their teams haven't necessarily brought them back. I mean, Davante 32, Stephon Diggs 31, Keenan Allen almost 33, Amari Cooper almost 31, Chris Godwin 29. So a lot of these guys are older, not really many young options. If the Packers wanted to go the young route and find a talented, more top-tier type receiver, you're going to probably have to trade make a trade like DK Metcalf, which there's been those rumors swirling. Maybe the Bengals would want to do a tag and trade with T. Higgins. So if you want to get a young player, you're probably going to have to give some draft capital. There may be some later down the list, but guys who probably aren't quite as good. But as I mentioned yesterday with Davante, if you can get him for 13 to 15 million, if you would take something like that, I think that it's for a 1 to 2 year deal. That could be something that makes a lot of sense for the Packers. And so I do wonder if maybe the Packers and Davante will be in contact at all, or is this something that Brian Gutekunst is like, no, we're not going to touch this? Because on the one hand, if Davante comes back, who knows how much longer he wants to play? What if the Packers got into another spot where Davante Adams wants to play a few more years, the Packers don't want him, and then maybe there's some more, difficulty in moving on from him once again. Maybe Gutekunst doesn't really want to touch it. Who knows? But I think that if you're Gutekunst, you should at least see what Davante Adams is looking for. And if you can get him for 13 to 15 million for a guy who's still playing really good football, you're getting consistency. You're getting a guy who knows Matt LaFleur's scheme. There's a lot of reasons where Davante Adams could easily be a solid short-term answer. And then maybe in the future, you find someone else or, someone else starts to step up. Because as I said, if you guys saw, I can't remember which video it was in the past week, I made the point that if the Packers did absolutely nothing at wide receiver before the season started, which obviously they're going to do something. They're going to draft someone late, maybe at minimum. But if they did absolutely nothing at receiver, I wouldn't be that concerned. I think Dontavian Wicks is going to take some steps forward. I think he's going to get better at catching the football. There are some questions there, but I think Dobbs is a great receiver, one of the best route runners in the league. I think that the Packers, even with what they have, would still be a top 10 offense. So it's not like the end of the world if the Packers don't make some big splash at receiver. Even though I think it could make sense, it's not the end of the world. They're definitely going to add some more guys. And so if we get to the start of the season and they did nothing, made no big splash wide receiver additions, I'm not going to be very concerned. I'm honestly more, not necessarily concerned, but when you look at the 2025 season, I think that the Packers' success hinges a lot on Jordan Love, which clearly the receivers are tied to that. They need to catch the ball, but Jordan Love also needs to be more consistent. So those are my thoughts. If you want more Packers content, feel free to subscribe. Make sure you turn on the post notifications so you don't miss any Packers news. I'll be updating you guys with anything I see regarding, free agency, trades, all that kind of stuff. So stay tuned for that. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.